To my owners out there listening, starting next pay period, don't take any W-2 wages. Tell your accountant to pound sand for a day, all right? Don't take any W-2 wages. At the end of the month, take as much profit out of the business as you want, but that's your only pay. You have to recall how your business makes money. You have to feel the fact that when you look at your P&L and you see you've got 6 crappy points of percentage profit, yet you took $200,000 or $100,000, what you have this disparity, this incongruency to say, I make my money no matter how crappy we do. All I have to do is just have enough revenue that I can keep cash in my paycheck. As long as that disparity or lack of congruency exists, you will never feel the pain. You'll never be compelled to change. All right, welcome back to another episode of the BMK Vision podcast. Gary, today we're going over old territory, well-worn path, old shoes, old trail, whatever you want to say. You already know what I'm going to tell you. Today is all about time entry and why it matters. And your response was, Josh, we've talked about this a million times. They care or they don't care. And you're not wrong, but I still got to fight the fight, man.
Yeah, it's definitely something that doesn't seem to be resolved very easily.
No, no. And I say this too often to clients, which is, and I mean this sincerely, if people were good or great at time entry, I would be working at McDonald's. I would not have this shirt. I would not have this fancy iPhone. I don't know what I would have done with my life, as all the roads lead back to time entry from my very first day in 2003 to today. Do you believe me when I tell you that, or does that sound hyperbolic?
No, yeah, as an ex-MSP owner, it was the one thing that made sense right away for me, and I don't maybe I was unique, in kinda grasping the concept once we started talking, and I just kinda made it the priority, and once I saw, what happened after time entry was right, everything downstream from that, it was quite obvious that this was kind of the thing that held everything together.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you say it. And I want to I'll put this umbrella up top here. If you do not meet the BMK standard of time entry, I'm not here to tell you you're a lazy piece of garbage and that you just don't care. I would never tell you that you're turning a blind eye and you're irresponsible. I'm not telling people that. I would never call them that or say that about them. Okay. So just so we know, this is no judgment. What I will say is if you don't really care that you're to the level that we would expect you to be, you're probably not wrong. You're probably just missing a critical piece of importance here, which is you have to care about your agreement gross profit. These two go hand in hand. And what we see, and I just had the conversation earlier this week. What's today? Yeah, earlier this week. An MSP I've been buddies and friends with for 18 years. And I haven't paid attention to their environment for a long time. They just engaged us. We're going to have an amazing engagement. And I said, "Hey, show me your ConnectWise, show me these things." And it's like, dude, how did you backslide so far? When you had that awesome service manager in 2008, 2009, this was not like this. And man, he's a humble guy, very successful, very amazing. He's like, I know, I know. I've taken my eye off the ball for years. We were at an amazing place. Now we're terrible at it. So what he took his eye off the ball was agreement gross profit. And he drew the connection. He's like, I haven't looked at my agreement gross profit for 6, 7, 8 years now. And if I think about it, my time entry's been terrible for it. So that AGP is why you care about it at the level you're about to care about it.
Can we go back a little bit? You said the Baring-McKinley standard of time entry. What is that defined?
Yeah, dude, 50.01.01. 8 hours a day entered. Enter your time as you go. 40 hours a week entered, especially if you're US based. Those three are it. I need my time entered as I go. I need my 40 hours. I need 8 hours entered as I go throughout each day.
We talking about a timesheet or are we talking about something different?
Yeah, I'll kind of use, ConnectWise language, but this applies to any PSA. I'm talking about making a time entry for every ticket you work on that feeds into a timesheet. I'm talking about putting time against internal charge codes when I'm not doing client facing things. That's all assembling a timesheet in your PSA that must be submitted every week.
Okay. So you're not just talking about, hey, did I work for 8 hours a day? You're talking about what did I bill out of that 8 hours as well as the additional non billable hours?
That's right. And we'll put a fine tip on what Barry McKinley means when we say bill. Is it billable to an invoice for an hour worked? Is it billable against an agreement that includes most of those hours? Or is it billable to a project that we've worked?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because some people I've heard say, hey, our agreements are all inclusive. Why do we need time entries for those?
So what do they say after you smack the taste out of their mouth for saying that? What do they say after that? Because that's the only natural response when they say that to you. No, that's fair first order thinking, right? I got to spend the time them doing something. I'm getting fixed fee, no more dollars. You need to know the profitability of that agreement so that you're maximizing capacity. The analogy I gave, a million years ago was that'd be like a factory owner saying, "What does it matter how many units of production we have every day? I have the people here anyway, so we make what we make." Well, what if you're able to turn the speed up on that conveyor belt? You'd be able to put even more out, right? And you would actually make more profit per unit. So that's what I say to that.
So the one kind of aha moment that I had, which I know ConnectWise it allows you to do this. I'm sure other PSAs do as well. Um, is I was simply looking at, okay, I need the time entry in. I get it. Like that makes sense. But I looked at it from one dimension. I looked at it from, I want to know how much time we're spending on this agreement. And why I wanted to know that was I wanted to make sure we weren't spending too much time because then the client was getting too good of a deal, right? So if I if I said, "Hey, your agreement's $2,000 a month," and we spend, I think we billed $150 an hour, $100 an hour at times. Let's just say we spent 20 hours and $100 an hour. I knew, oh, okay, that agreement looks good, but I think there's more to the story than just kind of knowing what the amount was billed. There's that cost factor too, right? And that's a different cost depending on what employee was working that account.
That's right. That's right.
And and so when we are able to capture their time, we're not only just capturing the, hey, did we bill them under this fixed rate agreement? We're also capturing, as long as the PSA allows it, we capture how much that employee cost us as well, and that's how the AGP starts getting defined better. Is that true?
That's exactly right. And that's a good call out here. Um, that agreement gross profit formula is the agreement revenue for the period measured minus the hard costs of the licenses that we've assigned to that agreement to support that agreement, minus the cost of the labor put against that agreement in that period measured. Divided again by the agreement revenue, multiplied by 100, there's your percent. Right. So that employee cost is huge. So that member cost is important to get right. We could do a whole episode on that. I literally an hour and a half ago was looking at how somebody put their member costs in and their logic was awesome, but they had this huge monster formula that it's like, hey, I like it, but that's not, how the model works. So we could talk on that later. But yeah, yeah, you looked at, or is my client getting too good of a deal? And then you came to, am I profitable? Is my cost appropriate for what I charged?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. Now, I always put AGP as the big emphasis for time entry, usually just to get your attention. Okay. And I'm trying so hard not to cuss. The the other component where as a really, I don't wanna say mature, but a really thoughtful MSP will immediately go to, "Well, I wanna see how much time it takes us, per device or per, item in the network or per client, or user at my client, so I can tell a different story as well. I've been trying to compel this client to replace this thing. Can I show them that we put 70 hours against that thing in the last 12 months and that that downtime or that frustration level they're experiencing could be remediated if we just put a new one in there for them, that they buy a new thing? Or internally, if it's like, this client's so tough, they don't care how much time we put against that thing. Is the MSP going to say, we're going to replace that thing? It's going to cost $1,000, but we're gonna recoup the 20 hours we put into that thing over too short of amount of time. So that data that you get from how much time is being put on specific devices or people at your client's location is an amazing story to be able to tell.
So why don't you share some examples? Because when I think about that level of accountability, it just seems like that would be amazing, but
Who's doing that?
man, am I really gonna go down and run reports based on how much time we're spending on setting up Outlook for a specific client or something like that? Like whatever the the report that we're looking for that gives us that detail. Like what do you see out there as far as kind of
Reality.
the MSP? Like, is I'm sure some are doing that. Or how? Like, do you have to be at a certain level of business? Is it a
Yeah.
number of employees? Is it what is the formula that seems like that works and they actually use it?
So, quick shout out to Ronnie Vliet. So he introduced me to the type, subtype, item categorization of tickets. And this was like 2009. And when he showed me the reports that he would run out of ConnectWise, and they were so awesome at time entry, I was blown away. That was like let's call that 2009. I didn't see that again until like 2000, number of years later. And then I didn't see it again for many more years after that because it's a pain in the neck, right? Now you can collect all the data you want. ConnectWise was really tough to get that information out and the cycles that it took to do. And then, do I have the right type of account manager who's actually going to interpret it? Yeah, dude, practical reality, no one did it. In the last 2 years, I'm like, oh, this is 2008 all over again. People are using AI and people are using automation, and it's easy to get the information or easier to get the information out and take action on. So if we were having this conversation 5 years ago, everyone could just check out right now. I'm probably not gonna be the guy that does it. What do I care about that thing? Okay, we'll refer back to agreement gross profit. But to your exact point in question, we're seeing this massive uptick in people saying, "Oh, I've always wondered how I could get this information." Now they're spinning up their Roost, or they're setting up their Claude, or they're setting up something where it's just like, "Oh, this is just spit out in front of me." And we're seeing a little better quality, not much, but a little better quality in the QBR documentation people are creating with a little bit of automation. I think we're at day one of an amazing thing that's going to happen because people aren't limited to the really substandard reporting that they've gotten out of their tools so far.
Okay, so let's let's talk about the time entry. So we kind of defined a couple reasons why they should care, what impact it could have. Maybe we'll dive into that a little bit deeper later. But is time entry, are we looking for perfect time entry? Are we looking for habit forming time entry? Like, where do you sit with that? Like, what does the owner that's listening to this say? Yeah, I have bad time entry. I want to solve it, but man, it's very daunting. What's kind of the unlock for them?
So I'll try not to be too much of an old man. And, you ask me, what time it is, and I tell you clocks are built. I'll try to avoid that. But I have to go back a little bit. If we went back to, the first, 2003, 4, 5 to about 2015, most people, probably myself included for some period of time of that, would say techs were told to enter their time, they don't do it, therefore techs are bad. Techs are, defiant, they're behaving poorly. Okay. That would be a thesis that most people shared, myself included for some of that. We've matured past that. And now what we're recognizing even better is, why don't techs enter their time? Because they're too busy and they've been burdened with too many decisions that they shouldn't have to make. So if you want to believe me, I'll tell you techs don't enter their time because they're having to make a choice 5, 10, 20 times a day. Do I stop and enter my time, or do I go help the next client? If that's your world, you're going to have a really steep mountain to climb to change the behavior, because your techs are doing what feels right and what you've tasked them to do. You're probably going to come down a lot harder on them because they forgot a client or forgot to call a client back. You're going to come down harder on them for that than for not entering their time. So just Pavlovian logic says you're going to do the thing that feels right to you. So what solves that? Dispatch. So that's a whole nother episode. But as long as your clients are having to split brain and task switch and make decisions like that, they have a tough road ahead of them. Let's presume that that's not your problem. Now, what it becomes is, have I been educated what our standard is? Can they look somewhere in your organization and say, here's our standard: 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, submit by Friday, enter your time as you go. Once that's put in front of them and they're clear on it, well, that's 50% of the battle right now, because you may not have been that clear with it in the past. But now we get into the next thing, which is inspecting at the same rate that you expect. I expect you to enter your time as you go, but I only inspect it at the end of the month when I'm trying to do billing, or I only inspect it casually when you finally submit it. So now what our words don't, our standard doesn't match our behavior. Okay. We're asking you to do it as you go, but we're only looking at it sometime in the future. So we need an immediate feedback loop that says, if I'm asking you to enter your time as you go, well, then I better be looking at it as you go. Okay. So what we're looking for you to do is 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Okay. Somebody is reviewing it and they're giving immediate actionable feedback. Ask me what that looks like, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, who who's the crazy person that's doing this?
Yeah, and hopefully there's a better answer for this sometime in the future. Today there is not a better answer. That crazy person can be anybody. You want to hire your really sweet grandma to do it, you'll get the same great outcome as if you, the owner, do it. Or if very practically you say my dispatcher does it, or very practically you say my service manager does it. Whoever. It's not a technical thing, it's a behavioral thing. So at 10 o'clock, I looked, I have 5 texts, 2 of them haven't kept up on their time. I'm either walking to their desk or I'm calling them. And this is how big of a priority. Can't exaggerate this, I don't think. Whatever that technician is doing, you give them permission to stop doing that thing and say, hey, take a break, bud. Enter your time. I got you. I'm with the president of our biggest client, the biggest outage of their life. Sick, dude. Hand the phone to me. I'll tell him you'll call him back in 10 minutes. Okay. Got it. Let's go ahead and enter your time. We're not berating. We're not shaming. We're not being mean. We're not being anxious. We're just saying, take a break, enter your time. Now, the most common reaction is, okay, cool. As soon as I'm off this call, I'll do it. Now we lose it at that point. It's, go ahead and stop. And I'll sit right here. We'll talk about the football game, the fights, whatever you want to talk about while you enter your time. Okay.
So I'm just gonna say, for all these other owners and all these other service managers, there's no way I could do that with the team that I have. I've got people out in the field. I've got people, remote. I've got people on site. I've got people on emergency calls. how could I possibly execute a plan that looks like that for every single tech in the building or outside for that matter?
Yeah, this is one of those scenarios, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Your why just isn't big enough. If
Okay.
you find those blockers, you're right. Your why has to be really big, which is I demand higher service gross profit. I demand higher agreement gross profit. I am don't want to hear that we need to hire yet another body because we're too busy, but the numbers don't support it. That why has to get so big that any of those objections, which are real, become big enough for you to say, I can do it. I will do it. I'm going to let the guys know here's the standard for time entry. And oh, by the way, if my grandma calls you, you answer that call, period. Okay, you know exactly why I'm calling. And if you don't answer that phone, there's a whole then now we have a problem. All you have to do is answer the phone. Okay. Now, how does that sound to you?
Yeah, I want to go deeper into that why factor because that's I think the driver here. I think we can all agree that time entry is important. I think we can all agree that it affects the company in a negative way when it's not done properly in various forms. I'm still stuck, playing the business owner role of, okay, I know I hear you on why it would be important for gross profit eh, on the agreements. I hear you on when we feel like we're overloaded, but we can't provide proof. We have no way of making that decision. What does that mean though? Like where does this really start to fall apart? Where am I going to feel this pain um the most?
We'll be right back with more. But first, here's a quick message from Baring McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Baring McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With Vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
I'll tell you what, to my owners out there listening, starting next pay period, don't take any W-2 wages. Tell your accountant to pound sand for a day, all right? Don't take any W-2 wages. At the end of the month, take as much profit out of the business as you want, but that's your only pay. You have to recall how your business makes money. You have to feel the fact that when you look at your P&L and you see you've got 6 crappy points of percentage profit, yet you took $200,000 or $100,000, what you have this disparity, this incongruency to say, I make my money no matter how crappy we do. All I have to do is just have enough revenue that I can keep cash in my paycheck. As long as that disparity or lack of congruency exists, you will never feel the pain. You'll never be compelled to change. That's just a fact. So you will likely never feel this pain if you keep being able to pay yourself your 200K and have really terrible net profit. I can't force you to feel the pain. Does that check out with you, Gary?
Yeah, Yeah, I think it's getting closer, right? So I think what you're saying is the net profit, if with poor time entry, we typically see a straight line to the bottom line, and the straight line looks bad with poor time entry.
It's going to be one of the biggest variables. And you go look at your P&L right now. What's your service salaries to service revenue ratio? For most of you, it's going to be above 33%. Give me a call. I'll do it for free. I'll tell you how that's hurting you.
Well,
Now your
hold on.
service department, go ahead.
What is that? What does that number mean?
My percent, how much service payroll I have divided by how much service revenue I have. And if you're not,
Why
if
is
you're,
that important?
as that's the ratio of how much it's costing you to deliver those services, and 33% is the right number. And what we prove that with is now tell me your service department gross profit, because the payroll is going to be the biggest driver of it. That's going to be 49, 48, 47%. You're going to live there forever. And you'll meet a guy like me every once in a while, and I'm going to shake you and try to get you to care. But that number is going to be subpar. Now we're going to go to your combined gross profit. And if we're not at 42%, now we have the problem of, after that, I've got sales expenses and G&A, which comes straight from the gross profit. And that's when you're going to start telling me I can't afford marketing. I can't afford a salesperson. Um, my G&A is too high because I'm doing all this other nonsense in here. And now we're landing at our 3, 5, 6% net profit. Does that story make sense, Gary?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. What I want to understand is, let's say we get the time entry fixed, right? Let's say all of those things are true and our bottom
Okay.
line number does not look good. We're at
Yeah.
2% net profit. We're paying ourselves, but to your point, like, don't pay yourself and see kind of what you can afford to pay yourself. Let's just say it's 2% net profit and we're just not happy with that. And by the way, no one really should be, not in a service business.
All right.
Our target is 17% for the best MSPs out there. If you're doing
That's right.
better, good on you. What I want to understand though is, let's say we figure out, okay, time entry is not being done right. Let's say we get a few months under our belt, we fix it, meaning we're tracking it. Is this a silver bullet? Just because we track time, does that mean everything else works out? What are we actually saying here?
What we're saying here is that in our observation with many, many MSPs, thousands of MSPs, this is the thing that's killing you. However, it's not the only thing that's killing you. But if you solve that problem, your probability of increasing that net profit is huge. We still got to address, did you price this stuff right? Were you a little too soft in $100 a user when you should have done 150? Were you too soft in charging 125 an hour when the math says you have to be charging 180 because of your cost basis? Time entry ain't going to solve that, but it's sure going to shine a really bright light to say there is no mystery here. Your pricing is terrible, but you can have your pricing was terrible and we suck at entering our time, so we get an even worse outcome. Or my pricing was terrible and I don't lie to myself. I can see very clearly that my pricing was terrible. And I'm glad you brought it up, because nothing's going to solve your poor pricing other than increasing your prices. Unless you can magically find a way to pay people, 30% of what you're charged paying now, which that ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, to me, it's like, if we're having the profit problem, there's things to look at, right? Pricing's one of those, but it's not fair to say that it's priced wrong, especially if we're at like market rate. We can't say, hey, this is priced wrong, with the absent of time entry. Because if we have time entry, then we can actually say, hey, we are priced right. We're just spending too much time on on the agreement. Is that kind of where
That's
you're
fair.
you're what you're saying? So you only have one side of the story.
Right. Right.
So the time entry is kind of the other anchor to say, hey, what's reality showing us as far as like where our costs are going, our labor costs, where that's going, is that sufficient in our pricing model? Is that sufficient in our gross profit projections? And then with the absent of that, we are left there guessing one side of the story, it sounds like.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And just to personalize this a little bit, this is hard. Like just because I'm saying it hopefully clearly and that it's making logical sense does not imply that this is easy, right? And as you go through this exercise of trying to figure out what's my relationship to my pricing and my profit and my time entry and how much time things take, Gary, you had to beat me over the head to finally get me to understand, Josh, you're not going to outsell your way out of the problem you're facing at Barry McKinley. I remember the moments very clearly because even though I know all this logical stuff, when it applied to my own business, I wanted to just anchor down to say, all I need is 10 more clients. All I need is another $5,000 a month and we're in great shape. And as I said it, it felt true. But you're like, no, if you don't change your behavior once you sell it, all you're doing is bringing in more poor margin revenue. And I think you even showed me, you're like, okay, let's pretend you charge this much. And then we did the math. It's like, oh, you're right. More dollars doesn't solve this. More dollars with better behavior and smarter agreements solves the problem. Okay. And as long as it took me to finally get in and execute, that's how long it took. But it proved itself, just like it will for you as an MSP. You've got to get the great behavior and get the pricing right. But we don't want two variables wrong. Okay. On any chart, in any formula, change one variable, you get a linear change. Change two variables, you get a logarithmic change, which is what we want. So if you're doing two things poorly, at least take it down to one thing poorly, get some change.
So let's shift to kind of the idea around what most MSPs gravitate towards to solve this problem. Oh, I've got it. This new tool that just showed up, it's got AI in it. It's going to do my job for me as far as inspecting because it's going to like call them and ask them, we've got this agent now. We hit them with an email, we hit them with a text message, we got an app, we got some AI in the background kind of checking their calendar and pushing time entry in there. Tell me how this doesn't solve their problem.
Yeah, yeah. In ConnectWise, there was this button. It's still there, and it was you would see that not all the time was entered, and you would click their name, and it would send them a message, saying, "Hey, update your time." That was like the first kind of like, "Oh, I can solve it with a button." Now we've got AI and all the other things. Reminders don't work, browbeating doesn't work, reminding them doesn't work, penalizing them. I had somebody talk about penalizing earlier this week. Uh, Over rewarding them doesn't work. It's a face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, or at least ear to ear if you have to do this remotely. It just requires human touch. Now, maybe somebody listening this says, I don't believe in micromanagement. Micromanagement is stupid. I used to work for okay, fine. It's not micromanagement. It's called management. Hey, there's no variable, no position in the world where accountability shouldn't be the driver. And accountability comes from face to face saying, yep, I did this thing. That's why we Catholics love confession. Okay. I can just sit here and say, "Oh, sorry, God, I did this bad thing. Cool, I feel better." I got to go to a priest and say, "Hey, priest, I did this really crappy thing, and I'm really embarrassed to say it. And please help me get my forgiveness." I don't Catholic, not Catholic, I don't care. That's the point: is that face-to-face confrontation with, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and I'm having another human look me in the eyes, calling me out on it in a really helpful way. We're still just humans, right? So all the automation, all the tools, we're not there yet. Hopefully we get there. Hopefully there's something that just makes time entry automated see me, I'll find $5 and invest in your company. But today, it's still human to human.
So I did a little research on kind of the tools that were out there and, the AI around time entry. And because I was like, surely someone's trying to solve this problem. I don't know if there's any MSPs that do this, quote unquote, perfectly, right? Like I think they all struggle at a certain level, at least with one or two of their guys or girls. What was interesting thought that came through my head, maybe you have an opinion on this, is like, they're not going to not use tools, right? We're MSPs. We're going to tool ourselves to death. We don't care what you say. There's a tool
Yeah,
out there. I'm going to use it. I'm going to adopt it.
that's right.
Um, the thought that came up for me was, okay, if they go and use AI, they're going to get their time in, right? Like the AI is going to scan their calendar. It's going to prompt them. They're going to do a voice note. It's going to be a nice looking time entry. It's probably going to be fairly accurate.
Mhm.
It's going to change all the, you know, type subtypes and items in there.
Hell yeah.
Why does that not work? I have an opinion. Maybe it's measured, maybe it's not. But from your perspective, if we get the task of time entry done, why doesn't that solve the problem for us?
I I I I don't know that it doesn't. I think if you found a way to say, "I have figured out how to capture what my tech was doing," either by recording the session or, reading the calendar, and the calendar's always right. I don't know that that doesn't solve the problem, but, please, I'm probably not thinking about it entirely clear yet.
Yeah, I think what I came up with was, okay, let's take an example of like client and I have a Zoom meeting or Teams call. It's recording the transcript. I'm recording their screen potentially. Um, I'm getting all the data I can, right? Like I get literally the clicks. There's software out here there that's doing this. There's AI that's capturing all this. We end the call. It knows about the client. I don't know if this product exists, but surely someone will build it. It knows ConnectWise. It makes the time entry. It's got the timestamps, puts all the information in, probably attaches the video to it. The issue that I thought about after that was, okay, well, we did the job, right? We got the time entry in there, and that was the perfect storm, right? Like we weren't on the phone taking the call on the freeway,
Right, right.
telling them to reboot their computer and try this, try that, which is a time entry that we often miss. So we got the perfect storm of everything was in place to get this part done. But even then, what I thought was like, if I'm reviewing that time as either the person that put in the time, another tech that needs to see what happened, or the dispatcher that needs to approve it or billing, because that person that did the task didn't actually enter their time,
Mhm.
it's still not accurate. It's probably close, right?
Right.
Is it good enough that says, "Hey, I talked to Bill at 2:30 till 2:45 and told him to reboot his computer and it solved the problem"? Is that a good time entry, and does that solve the problem? Or was there something more that the AI or the systems didn't capture, the nuance of that? Bill was really pissed off, probably should be put in the time entry. This is the 10th time Bill's called. He let me know that, probably should be put in the time entry. So are there things that the human's going to do that the tools just don't do, and you just get more time, but not good time?
Okay. So I don't know if my following statement is supporting, your early idea on this or not. I think if you've solved for, I figured out how to capture the actual time, I would hope that it included transcript. And if it included a transcript and you've got a great automated prompt that says, "Hey, this is how I format these notes of what happened, the client sentiment," I think that just comes naturally along with it. And I'll tell you, what if that tool did that, any owner in the world is gonna say, "That's a way better note than my technician was gonna put in on what actually happened on that call."
Yeah, so that's where I got stuck was, are we asking for the tech to put in time in a specific way that's more human kind of thought and potentially miss things? Or is a transcript through
Transcript.
AI that potentially fills up the system with too much data?
Yeah, I think I think we've got 2 things here, and it's such an important distinction. I gotta get great at entering my time, start, stop. If that's all I ever got, I'm 30% happier than I am today. Great client notes are really critical to it. We want both, and I think in this future state, the transcript is gonna be the key. A transcript or recording, prompting yourself to death to say, this is exactly how to format this. And again, in our imaginary tool, if it could actually make configuration changes and, make sure the agreement is right and keep that ticket hygiene and time entry hygiene beautiful, that's where we're going.
Yeah, and I still think that there's this gap, right? Like, there's no transcript when I'm in the server room at 2 a.m., trying to get that thing online, right? Like, that's just not happening.
Wouldn't it be hilarious though if like we've just had 38 minutes of like really genuine conversation around this, and then we just turned this into an infomercial where we're like, and by the way, we invented it. It's 99 credit card, click the button right there. That'd be hilarious. We just did
Trust
this
me, I
little twist.
I think about it daily on is there an answer to this problem? Because to your point, I think it is that important. So tools can assist. So tools aren't bad in their own way, but too much tooling can be noise that just gets ignored, right? The
Yeah.
third alert from a text message or whatever, it's just they're gonna ignore that versus whatever.
Yeah. The human
Um,
coming in and saying, hey, bud, take a break.
okay, so like let's brighten up the day for the owner that's listening to this saying,
Okay.
okay, shoot, you're telling me I've got to pay someone to babysit, micromanage, okay, management. How long does this go on for? Like, is there any habit forming that happens over time that I can look at and say, hey, it's going to be brutal for the next 6 months, a year, 2 years. But over time, what we find is habits form, things get better, processes drive performance. And if anything, it just drives our reliance on good time entry and sets the bar.
So this is why I don't live in a mansion. Okay. Is I gotta keep it real with you. I can't promise you a silver bullet and then do this for 6 weeks and then everything's perfect. It sadly doesn't. Okay, the reality is, it's a contracting and expanding feedback loop. Commit to 3 weeks. Okay, you got 10 texts. Commit to 3 weeks. By the end of week one, some percentage of them, two of them, maybe one, maybe three, are you're going to say, "Oh, by Friday, I never had to call them." In week two, you might see that two or three more, you're having to call them fewer times in the week. By week three, somebody from week one that was doing good was slipping a little bit. They have to feel the consistency. I can't remember the neural pathway or something that happens in our brains. We have to do something for a certain amount of time before it becomes a habit. Anything less than 6 weeks, and all you've probably done is you've conditioned them that, oh, Josh is on a tear. Okay, I guess we'll weather this storm. They may not think it consciously, but their subconscious is getting that message, and then things go back to normal. And in 5 weeks, that's gonna be a miss. It's just gonna further compound the problem. What really happens is do it for 6 weeks and say, okay, everyone's doing a good job. Maybe instead of me having to do it 3 times a day, I'm down to 2 times a day. Maybe I'm down to 1 time a day. Oh, you know what? Here we're slipping a little bit. I'm gonna have to come back. I think you run that for 2, 3, 5 months, and most of the people are going to be behaving closer to your standard. but you've just started a new journey where this is just what it is. It's just like a kid, man. Make your bed, make your bed, make your bed, right? If I just say make your bed and then Sunday I come back and say, "Hey, Tuesday and Thursday you did it great. The other days you didn't." The feedback wasn't close enough to the action for it to have made a difference. We have to constantly reinforce the good behavior. So yeah, this is a lifetime journey you're on. And again, the hardest part is not getting frustrated, not getting mad, just knowing this is just humans, man. Any job, I guarantee you, you go to the doctor's office. Doctor comes in, the little flags, he comes in, he says blah blah blah. He walks out of that room, goes to the end of the little hall, and he enters all the stuff and he comes back and says, "Here's your prescription," or "Here's whatever." If there wasn't charge nurses and administrators and billing clerks all demanding that, that doctor would be just as bad as anyone else, right? And just like an attorney somehow solved this problem. Why? Because they're paid on billable hours, right? So they just naturally have it, but they've got assistants and they've got secretaries and all the things helping and demanding. All you're doing is helping your technician here. Hey, there's another version. Get a PA for every one of your texts, or put a special phone that they call somebody in the Philippines and leave a recording and say, ticket ABC, blah, 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 blah. Okay. You can solve this a few different ways, but ultimately just inspect at the same rate that you expect. There is no shortcut here, unfortunately.
So some practical things that I introduced into my business to help this process along. One is and I think you would agree. So what we're not saying is don't, what we're saying is don't try to just use incentives to solve the problem. But you can use incentives to help solve the problem. So if you're doing the inspect and you say, "Hey, by the way, for every time entry or for every time submission that's, 8 hours, in the week, we give you a little $50, commission on that," or whatever. So we introduced it in a couple different ways. We celebrated it, right? So it was like, "Hey, look, everyone did it." And we realized, like, it just the fact that, like, everyone was going through it together, it became a big deal, and it was cool to just be like, "Hey, we actually did it." Like, this was something to celebrate. We would do that every Monday morning, when we would come in. The other thing that we would do is we would attach the time submission to a KPI that we would track, and that KPI was actually anchored to the employee's review, and the employee review was how, scores on the employee review took them to the next level. So it was a requirement to get a certain score to be able to, get to a level 2 or level 3, and time entry was part of that. So it kind of just folded into kind of like what I would always tell them is like, "Hey, the job doesn't stop when the task is done, it stops when the time is in."
That's right.
So
That
it's the
that's
whole
exact
job is do the support and put in the time. That's the job.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to that point, so what I'm really hearing you say is report on it. Let everyone know how we're doing. So if we look at there's the really tough thing of entering your time as you go. But then there's this kind of easier thing of the standard for when time gets submitted. So if we said, "Hey, for this next 2 weeks, do a better job at entering your time, but for the next 2 weeks, I want 100% compliance that everyone submitted their time by end of day Friday, 6 p.m." Okay. Now that's super measurable. It's super reportable. It's super easy for you to just kind of take a moment, on Friday night to say, "Oh, I got 10 texts. Ooh, 10 submissions. Outstanding. Let's shout it out. Let's surprise you with a bonus," whatever we do that for a couple weeks, get that behavior in, because what that's really doing is supporting, hey, it's going to be really tough to enter your time by or submit your time by Friday at 6 if you're spending from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock trying to jam in all your time entries accurately. So hopefully that conditions you to enter your time as you go even better. But that's a really easy reportable thing. MSP bots did a great job. I'm sure there's other great tools as well that said, hey, for the real time component, I can see what percentage of people's times and the team's times were entered on time, meaning your time entry said it was from 2 to 3 o'clock on Tuesday, but the log says you entered it out Wednesday at 8 a.m. So there's this whatever 14, 18-hour gap. Getting that metric in front of the team to say, oh, they actually are paying attention. They are calling this out, but they're also not berating us. They're not also beating us up. It's kind of a parenting or teaching thing. Praise the positive, ignore the negative. Okay. As humans, we're much more conditioned to focus on the negative. Just praise the hell out of the time entry of the one person who sucks at it and say, dude, I really appreciate you getting that time entry in right on time. That was sick. We chase that reward, right? We chase that praise. All right. So yeah, you report on it. Yeah, you make it easy to report on. You make it right in front of everyone in a neutral or positive manner, and that's going to help the journey quite a bit as well. Okay? And to
Cool.
your point, with the job ain't done until you enter your time. I used to say this more often than I should have. It's like your kid doesn't wash their hands after they go to the bathroom. If they came out and said, I didn't have time to, you wouldn't have accepted that. No, you teach your kid the job of going to the bathroom ain't done until you're drying your hands off with the towel, right? So you have time to do it. Okay. So impress upon them with that. But it just, I think the overall theme is here. It's a conversation. It's a setting a standard clearly. It's you having your big enough why. It's you inspecting it at the same rate that you expect. But again, if your why isn't big enough, if you don't care about AGP, if you can't draw that connection to why time entry leads all the way to the bottom line, then this last, 49 minutes, it's deaf ears. Hey, but I certainly have other shit to do today. This isn't my favorite topic. I got no dog in your fight. This is important, and we know it makes a difference. Hey, that. And I will personalize this too. I enter my time. I enter my time most of the time as I go. I've got a massive workflow that says my calendar has to be perfect. I have to get my transcript recording. Fortunately, everything I do is remotely. I got to grab that transcript. I got to put it in my AI agent. I've got to make my meeting notes, and all of that time. That's the stop time. Hey, so it takes me a good 15 minutes post meeting to do that. Your text life isn't that much, easier. Hey, so be patient. Understand my life would be better if I would actually not go back to back meetings, if I actually had a half hour in between calls, but I'm greedy and I want to bill as many hours as I can. So my life's pretty ugly. I have to live it. Your techs have to live it.
Yeah.
Hey, good session, Gary. I like this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully it sheds some light on how to solve this problem for people. It's
Yeah,
definitely one of those things where if you can get this right, everything becomes much more clear of what's going on in the business. It's very important.
absolutely. Oh, and another thing, by the way. Okay, here's another one. If your why isn't financial, if your why isn't smoother operations, I'll leave you with this. If you ain't been sued yet, high chance you will be eventually. And just imagine yourself being deposed and saying, no, Bob did the thing. He made the patch update. He did it. Okay. If you don't think opposing counsel is going to go down to every nuance, they're going to call guys like me and say, how could the guy I'm suing prove to me he did the time entry? Well, you could look at this log. You could look at the time was entered. You can look at the notes. You can look at, the agreement and what's supposed to be covered. I'll give them all the information. And when you get deposed, that opposing counsel is going to be an expert. And if you think it's going to be comfortable to sit there and say, pinky swear, he actually did the thing, but your records aren't spot on, you're screwed. Your insurance is going to go through the roof. You're probably going to get denied your claim. You're going to have to pay out the pocket. So if the liability in today's cybersecurity world isn't enough to scare you into better behavior, then I got nothing for you, brother. And that's some real talk right there. I've been involved in that twice, and that ain't fun. That's a pretty small percentage of everyone, but
Yeah.
it is a thing.
Yeah.
All right. Gary, anything else we need to hammer home here?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Everyone, leave a comment. Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me I'm a micromanaging fanboy. Whatever you want to say, I want to hear it. I want to read it. And if you want just any little pro tips or some input, give us a call. And by the way, same offer stands. Give me 50K. I'll do it for you for 10 weeks. If you don't like the outcome, don't give me my 50K. All right? Because I know it works. All right. See you guys. Bye.
So, yeah.